NBA players versus management. A battle we all have in any profession, the employee versus the employer, and headline NBA players, though, in particular, that have taken a chokehold over where they end up and how they get there, and they've got all the power. We've seen that a lot over the last 10 years in particular. Now, it's always been that way to one degree or another in the modern era of free agency, but typically it was only when you got to free agency that you could do that. Now it doesn't matter. The contracts are void. They're irrelevant. The players often make more money from endorsements than they do from the teams that pay them. It's one of the downsides of the salary cap, and some are pushing back. There were some comments which I thought were interesting. I wanted to talk about them with you from a high-ranking executive on this topic of conversation. So if you didn't see it, let me give you the truncated version here. Squeeze it together. So player empowerment, this is a quote, player empowerment is a catch-all for the fact that the league has, you're talking about the NBA here, the league has done a terrible job of empowering teams. This is according to a current NBA general manager that was not named, made these comments incognito, but not Richie Incognito. And this NBA general manager complaining to the New Yorker. But wait, there's more. Quote, the players have all the leverage. In every situation, the GM moaned, I think it's the worst thing that ever happened to professional sports on all levels, close quote. The money quote is that last line. I think it's the worst thing that ever happened to professional sports on all levels. Like this is a Greek tragedy. So let's parse the words. Let's parse the words of this undercover executive with a lampshade on their head. And we discuss. So the question, does this unanimous NBA general manager have a right to be upset? If you were an NBA executive and you were in charge, would you be happy or unhappy with the way the league is operated these days? And if you are honest with yourself and you look at this objectively, if you were an executive in the NBA and your job was to build a team, you would be in total agreement with whoever this unanimous GM was. So I am nodding my head in agreement. So I've got chauffeurs, wrecking ball, and gumption. And we will connect all these things together like Legos. Now, first of all, if you've been around the sport of basketball for a long time, and I don't know which GM this is, we can play, speculation game and try to figure out which GM it is. And this was in the New Yorker, and we can look at the writer and see who that writer has, in what cities that writer's been in, and it's likely some general manager that had a connection with said writer. That's normally how these things work. But I didn't do that, so we don't know the name of the GM. But if you've been around, the point is still the same. Right? If you've been around for a long time, you have seen a sea change. The dynamic is different. And I can certainly see both sides. I see both sides, and believe it or not, I am not against the players having power and all that stuff. But if it's too much on one side, it's a problem, right? If you take 3 steps back and consider yourself an executive, you got a nice corner office, you're making a lot of money, you don't have to worry about scoring points, you don't have to worry about staying in shape, you just have to select the right player in the draft and not screw up the trade market. But if you were that executive, you would be bug-eyed thinking about the way things have become compared to the way things were. Executives now in the NBA are mostly glorified chauffeurs. Their job is to accommodate the superstar player and drive them to the teams they would like to play for. It's kind of like that Drake song, wants and needs. Whatever the wants and needs are of the players must be accommodated by the executives, right? You're going to get it if you're a big enough name in the NBA, but only the headliner, the rank and file of the NBA can't do that. We're talking about a very small percentage of players. But in that sport, for better dynamic. You have a couple of superstars, you're a contender. You can have a bunch of good players. You can win some regular season games, but it's a whole different world when you've
got... For better or worse, they matter more, right? It's a different...
My argument is there has to be some balance. Like, we are talking about a high-stakes game of tug of war. It's tug of war, right? For years, management had too much control, and they had too much power. But now the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. It's kind of like my mom used to tell me. I didn't listen to her because I was fat, but moderation. She used to say, Ben, everything in moderation, Ben. What are you doing? You don't need to eat all those Pop-Tarts. Everything in moderation. You know, it's like, I love banana cream pie. I think it's the perfect pie. A well-done banana cream pie is the perfect pie. But eating banana cream pie, if I eat it all the time and I eat too much of it, I get sick of it. Right? And superstar players have become the wrecking ball. Is that overly dramatic? They can snap their fingers and get coaches fired in the NBA. Randomly, they wake up one morning and choose not to play for their team anymore because they're not happy, and they get away with that. Or they say, you know what, I only want to play in L.A. or Miami, or I want to play in, dare I say, New York? Brooklyn, but not Manhattan. But the players can literally and figuratively quit in the middle of a contract, but still get paid, and get what they want. All right, so what's the point of the contracts? And it's a two-way street, though. I mean, because this guy's complaining. I don't know who this is. This bozo's complaining. You know, it's the worst thing it's ever happened to professional sports. But it takes two to tango. To get to this point, the executives in that business had to bend over backwards and be very flexible, shall we say, with the executives. And now they've done that so often, it is now how it's supposed to be. Like, that's the expectation. And so it is a whole different world than it has been in the past. Now, secondly, you mentioned the situation with the superstar 1% players, right? The 1% players who control everything. And it seems like there's a bigger list. Like, it used to be like the top maybe 4 or 5 guys. But I feel like we're at the top 10 now. I think we're at the top 10 players can do whatever they want. All right, final thought here. So the issue here is not so much player empowerment as it is employees who's always, the expectation from the working class has always been, hey, I'm going to gain as much as I can. All right, I'm going to push the envelope as far as I can push the envelope. And the executives, at some point, what happened here, my hypothesis is they were caught sleeping. You could say it started with LeBron and bending over backwards for LeBron James, becoming a contortionist for LeBron. But it likely started before that. You know, you can trace it back probably even further than that. But LeBron was like the big change. That was the point of demarcation. And from that point forward, people have started caving into the demands of the star players. And it used to be that players would demand a trade and refuse to play, and that player would be suspended, and that player would be fined, and it would get ugly, and it would be bad. And now there's a lack of gumption, and a lot of the executives just like, well, what are we going to do? They throw their hands up in the air. I don't know what to do. All googly-eyed, they don't know what to do. It is an accepted truth, right? If you give someone an inch, they will take a mile. Overall, when you do a cost-benefit analysis, while it's great for the superstar players, it's certainly not great for the other players. And is it really good for basketball or is it bad for basketball? Well, the ratings have gone down in the NBA, and you're better off following a player than a team. And maybe that's fine. Maybe you should just follow players and don't really care about the teams. And if you're a LeBron James fan, you were a Heat fan for a while. You were obviously a Cavs fan. Now you're a Laker fan. And when LeBron's kid gets drafted, you'll be an Orlando Magic fan or a Charlotte Hornets fan or an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, wherever LeBron goes next. And the rivalry thing, that's also gonzo. Like the rival. I mean, there's people that don't like each other in the NBA, but the really us against them, you can't have the us against them when you don't really care what uniform you're wearing because it's all interchangeable. It's, hey, I work for the NBA, and they have 30 businesses in the NBA, and I can go to one franchise to another, and it doesn't matter, and everyone's buddy-buddy, and it's all grab ass, and you fraternize with everybody. So is there really that big bad blood rivalry? I'm going no.